Movies can have a lasting impression on you and bring back great memories. Certain images you will always remember. Things that have been with me all my life and keep getting added to with every movie I see.
I will turn this place into the fucking Wild Bunch if I think you are fucking with me.
Boutique going home.
This is the end of your rotten life, you motherfucking dope pusher.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Welcome to my Cellular Heart Podcast, Season 4, Episode 168. This is a podcast where we normally take two films that live in our head and heart and bring them together over two episodes by one topic or theme. Whole bunch to say. But this time we're going through the Quentin Tarantino movie. First of all, I'm your host, Phillip Duke, and I'm here with
his cousin Chip. Hey, everybody. Bum, bum, bum.
There you go. And thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Normally we put two movies together, but this time we're going through Quentin Tarantino's directing movies, written and directed. So we're going through Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, all the way up to Django Unchained, because we've already done The Hateful Eight on here, and we've already done Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So that's where we're going till the end of the year. Then at the end of the year, the very last show will be us talking about our favorite parts of season 4 and favorite movies that we've done for this year and for all the episodes.
All of the years.
That's right. And something before I forget, Reservoir Dogs will be our 200th movie that we've done on this show.
Ooh,
so it's only our 168th episode, but I've done with other people, with you, we've done two, I used to do 2 or 3 movies at a time. So,
yeah.
But we do have an announcement. Bum, ba, bum.
Yay!
That the butter guy has
the Imperial. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's like, God, you guys are old. So we have a special announcement. New podcast starting January 20th, 2023. That Chip and I had this idea in like August. It was before Quentin Tarantino's book came out, before the I don't know, Video Archives might have been out. But anyway, we had this idea. I said, I found this list for like 336 movies, and then that Quentin Tarantino has either recommended or talked about.
Yeah.
And that are great, not ones that are sucky. Like sometimes on Video Archives podcasts, they'll be like, oh, that wasn't very good. But ones that he recommends that are good and that might have influenced his work. So I said, oh my God. So I went through that list and I was like, wait a minute, I've heard him talk about this and that and that. So I've added some films to it. So now, right now, as of now, it's a list of 347 movies. And I said,
could grow bigger.
Yeah. And I said, let's call it Making Tarantino, the podcast. I think it was my idea for the thing. I'm always questionable. It was your idea for Making Tarantino?
I don't know.
Okay.
We're too old to remember.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to piss you off. Just week. Like we'll get to on Reservoir Dogs, but I don't want to piss you off. But yes, we both came up with, I don't want a Bill Finger situation is what I'm saying, Chip. I'm not Bob Kane. I don't want to do that to you. So I said, what should we call it? Making Tarantino. Should we do it? Chip said Making Tarantino is good, or whatever. We said fine.
It was a mutual agreement.
There we go.
We're very indecisive, and I think we went back and forth a couple of times anyway. So
that, and the other thing is we've always said we're not Bob Kane, Bill Finger. We're like it's like fuck you. I came up with it or I didn't. It don't matter. But anyway, except for this movie that we're doing today, Reservoir Dogs. Anyway, our announcement is doing Making Tarantino. It's going to be more loosey-goosey. It's going to be where we don't have a walkthrough. We don't have recasted. We're not going to do any of that. It's just kind of a short and sweet, like diving into these movies and figuring out, do we see anything that might have influenced Tarantino that he may have seen or put in a movie or whatever. And so far we already recorded our first episode. And it was fun.
It went well. It was awesome.
And we did Rolling Thunder from 1977. William Devane, Linda Haynes, Tommy Lee Jones, directed by John Flynn. It's on Pluto or Tubi, wherever you want. It's free. You got to watch commercials, but yeah, we had fun. So that's so this podcast we're going to be ending. I'll let Chip talk in a minute. This podcast we're going to be ending at the end of this year, but it will continue on the YouTube channel because I'm not so the iTunes feed, the Spotify feed, all the feeds will be dead. There'll be nothing there because I'm not going to pay for it anymore after, say, February.
Yeah.
So, or the January. I let it go till January. But anyway, but if we had an idea of, hey, you know what hit me in the head and heart was, unidentified flying oddball. Oh my God, we never did that. Let's do it. Okay. And we'll get on YouTube and we'll do a thing. So that's what we're going to do. So there we go. So now, Chip, I'll let you talk while I drink my coffee. Tell them about Making Tarantino.
So as far as Making Tarantino goes, it's basically just opening up for us to have fun. I see it in a way, the way that me and Phil used to be when we both still had all of our teeth. We used to hang out at Denny's, and we would just talk about movies nonstop. We would get so passionate about these things. Well, I would be sometimes about comics, get a little crazy, but it was mainly we would talk about movies. And some of the people that would be fortunate enough to sit with us would sit there and listen to us ramble on for hours sometimes.
Yeah.
And then we would forget that they were even there and what the hell? But that's pretty much what we're kind of doing with this is we're going to have fun with it. That's why it's loosey goosey. We want to be passionate about it. We want the passion of what we've seen, the connection between the movie that we're watching and what Tarantino might have pulled from it to get you excited as the audience to want to watch these movies also. Or if we're like, holy crap, this was nuts and we don't want anybody to watch this, skip this one, then we'll tell you. We'll be honest. That's the good thing about this. We're going to be straight up honest with you.
Yeah.
It may have influenced Tarantino, but back then, but now I wouldn't watch it type of a thing. Then we'll tell you.
And we don't claim to know Quentin Tarantino. I have no idea. As Chip said, if he pees sitting down or standing up, I'm sure it's standing up. But it's that thing of that I'm excited because a lot of these movies that I've done on my show, I've seen. And that's the point of it is I wanted to share that passion with others. So if nobody has seen Star Trek Wrath of Khan, I don't know why, but if they haven't, I want people to go, oh my God, they talk with such passion. I got to see this movie or Cannonball Run or whatever. And with this one, I'm excited because with the Making Tarantino, the podcast, Chip and I have not, Chip usually hasn't seen these movies. He normally watches, A or B movies, but not maybe C or D or even older movies in the 70s and 80s or 60s. And so it's fun for me to be like, oh my God, Chip's going to experience now like Rolling Thunder and like all these things. And so it's really cool. And the other thing is right now I already have an Instagram page open for Making Tarantino, the podcast. So you can go there, you can follow us there. And then I'll be starting to share stuff in January or maybe the end of December. So yeah, it's very exciting. We're both excited because we're also like, let's move on to different thing. We had fun doing this. We have fun doing this, but let's go do this different kind of format and different fun, just different thing that we'll get things out of. And like we said, we'll be honest. Oh my God, that movie sucked. Or, oh my God, I thought this movie wasn't that good, but it was really good, So
that, and we're going to try and have a trailer up soon. Phil's got to, I guess, get it approved by iTunes at some point.
Like iTunes has to approve it, and to I already have the podcast set up. We're going to Anchor. It's already set up, but I have to. You could go to Anchor and watch it when I put it up, or listen to it. But I have to get it approved for all the other ones, which are iTunes first, and then everybody else just is like, okay, Spotify, and everybody just takes it.
Follows in.
So so that's where we're at. We're very excited. And so that's that announcement. And that's January 20th, 2023. We can't wait. I wish it was already here, but then that'd make me older. But speaking of announcements, our friend Tim Martin and his crew have made another short film, and it's available on YouTube. It's called Whispers. And you can go to YouTube and do a search for Whispers Short Film 2022. And we'll also have a link in the show notes when you bring this up, when you're listening to this. You're like, where is that? And it's 7 minutes, and the movie's about 5 minutes. And then you can see Chip and I's name in there at the end of like special thanks. So it's very cool. And that's by Arsenio Alvarez the third did it. And he was on the show. If you listen to our For the Love of Film podcast, me and Tim and him. And so he wrote it and directed it, and Tim produced it. And it's cool. It's a little creepy little thing to, I know Halloween's over, but hey, go check it out, guys. It's really cool. And then pretty soon Sushi's going to be out, and you're going to be able to watch Sushi. So awesome. That's Tim Martin's directed, and him and Alex wrote it. So, all right, that's all of our house cleaning. You have a sip of coffee while we get on with the show.
Sweet. I did want to say that I'm hoping that at some point we can plan with other friends from other podcasts to jump in and maybe do some reviewing with us of some Tarantino stuff, not just the two of us.
Yes, very true. I'm sorry, I teased that the TV spot was coming, but it wasn't. Yes, the thing of like on Making Tarantino, kind of like we have on here with like listener opinions. We'll probably still have that over there. And but also like having other people come in and be like, hey, be on the show, talk about what you liked about this movie, or or whatever. Or if it's something comes up and me or Chip can't be on there, then hey, fuck it, Jason, you run the show, or Chip run the show with Jason, or whatever. That'll be fun. So stuff like that. So, or all three of us or more, whatever we can work. It'll be fun. We're just really excited. It's a new project. Very excited about it. Yeah. So, all right. Now you ready to get on with the show?
I think so.
Okay, here we go.
You better start talking, asshole. Because we got shit we need to talk about. We're already freaked out.
With the exception of Eddie and myself, we already know, we're going to be using aliases on this job. Here are your names. Mr. Brown, Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, and Mr. Pink.
Why am I Mr. Pink?
Because you're a faggot, all right?
I got you!
You two take the manager in the back and make him give you the diamonds. We're there for those stones, period. Since no display cases are being fucked with, no alarm should go off. We're out of there in 2 minutes, not 1 second longer.
They get picked up the next day and sent to Vermont.
No, they're not. I got Madonna's big dick coming out of my left ear, and Toby the Jet, I don't know what, coming out of my right.
You ever listen to K. Billy's Super Sounds of the 70s?
Let's go to work.
What the fuck you touching me for, man?
Eddie, you keep talking like a bitch, I'm gonna slap you like a bitch.
Come on, man! Enough of that shit. Take this, the bastard you told me about? Are you beating up?
Just try and figure out who the bad guy is, right? Jesus Christ.
Hey, I changed my mind. Shoot this piece of shit, will you?
Reservoir Dogs, 1992. Now, I understand with this movie, a lot of people are going to be like, I know all the stories, I know all the fucking shit, but we're going through all these movies, so I want to tell these stories. And on the Quentin Tarantino effect that I released last week, I had some of these little things in there, but here is one that Chip maybe hasn't heard. So the title came from something that a customer at Video Archive said when Quentin Tarantino recommended Au revoir, Infants. So it's a French film about like during World War II, and these kids who are trying to find a home. And he was like, they were like, oh, why don't you see Au revoir infants? And the customer replied, I don't want to see no damn Reservoir Dogs. Like, I don't know where he got dogs from. I don't know why he thought infants were dogs or whatever. So Quentin was like, oh, that's a good name. I'm going to use that for a script. So very cool. The plot. Oh my God, Chip. I don't even have the plot written down. There was something that I didn't do. I know. What
a whole bunch of guys go after some diamonds and shit goes very, very wrong.
Pretty much. Wow, all of a sudden you're New York and they're all in LA. But yes, I got it right here, Chip.
Yeah, but the big man though, he had kind of a little bit of a you guys,
yeah, that is true. My way or the highway.
Yeah, my way or the highway.
When a single jewelry heist goes horribly wrong, the surviving criminals begin to suspect that one of them is a police informant. So, yeah, there was something that I also wanted to tell you. Lawrence Tierney, like back in the day, is fucking badass. He's like, you thought he's scary in Reservoir Dogs. He's pretty scary in general, in these old movies in the 40s and stuff, 40s and 50s. Yeah. And there was one called that I need to come through here and find, but he did a Dillinger movie. Oh, okay. And he did damn it. Sorry, everybody. See, we said the other show would be loosey goosey. This one's a little loosey goosey. He did Dillinger in 45. And he's like a big guy. Like he's pretty scary. He did, and him and Eddie Bunker at one point were like, got in a fight like back in the day. Because Eddie Bunker's like, I don't think he remembers, but I remember we got in a fight. Born to Kill in 1947. It's really good. If you guys can check it out, it's you got to rent it, but it's really good.
Sweet.
But anyway, so that's the plot. Stars Harvey Keitel as Mr. White / Larry Dimmick, Tim Roth as Mr. Orange / Freddie Neuendijk, Michael Madsen as Mr. Blonde / Toothpick Vic Vega, Chris Penn as Nice Guy Eddie, Steve Buscemi as Mr. Pink, Lawrence Tierney as Joe Cabot, Randy Brooks as Holdaway. So if you haven't seen 8 Million Ways to Die,
yeah,
he's in that movie. I saw him there and I'm like, oh my God, this was done in like 88 or 89. Then and that's one of Quentin's favorites is that movie. It's really good. It's got Jeff Bridges in it. It's, I think, available on Pluto as well. Sweet. Anyway, Kirk Baltz is Marvin Nash. What, Chip?
Go ahead. Lawrence Tierney, he was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, shit. Chip, I was just saying, Chip, I thought you were trying to be everybody, but yes, Chip is victorious as
I am victorious.
Guy. Yeah. Now I'm gonna get tripped over that guy's name. What's that guy's name?
That guy? Which guy? This guy? That guy?
The guy from Goldeneye.
Shit.
Starts with an A.
We do it every time.
I know. Every time we can't. Look up Goldeneye real quick, or look up X-Men 2. Marvin Nash. Oh, Kirk Baltz as Marvin Nash. Edward Bunker as Mr. Blue. So Eddie Bunker at 17 was the youngest ever felon in San Quentin. At fucking 17. Damn. Then in 1975, at the age of 22, he was paroled. So in there, he became friends with, go ahead, Chip.
Alan Cumming.
Yes, I told you it was an A. Alan Cumming. It's always weird because I always think like Alex or something. But anyway, in there, he became friends with Machete. Now I can't even think of his
Machete.
Yeah, what's his name?
You bastard. You bastard.
No. No, we know his name. It's motherfucker. Anyway, he became friends with him, and they were friends until he died. And he's the godfather of his son, actually.
Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo, thank you. He's the father of Eddie Bunker's son. I mean, the godfather of Eddie Bunker's son. And
wow.
Yeah. But Eddie Bunker was doing writing while he was in prison, and all of a sudden people were like, he started putting out books. So he did Straight Time, that turned into a movie with Dustin Hoffman. He did a movie called that just came out kind of recently. It was called Animal Factory. He wrote that, and he wrote a movie in 1985 called Runaway Train.
Oh wow.
And Danny Trejo was in it. He was like, "Can we put him in it?" So it's awesome. Quentin Tarantino as Mr. Brown, and Stephen Wright as K. Billy DJ voice. So written by Quentin Tarantino, inspired by The Killing and City on Fire, among others. Now, I've thought about this recently, especially us doing Making Tarantino. Tarantino has always said, like people, when it first came out, people were like, "Oh, he's just doing The Killing," because you haven't seen it, but that's the split narrative. It's jumping all around.
Oh, okay.
And that was Stanley Kubrick's third film. And this was when he started getting his style, like, for The Killing. And so Quentin's like, "No, I like the book." And that's how the book was. And Quentin always said, like, in one of the interviews that either you and I heard or that I've seen, Quentin said, "I always thought, why start the movie in the beginning? The book, like if it's a screenplay, a book, a movie, why start in the beginning? Just start with a bunch of action going on, and then you go back and like, oh shit, what happened? And then you find out, and it makes it more fun." And he's like, "Oh, I can do that." City on Fire, everybody says, because it's an undercover cop, Chow Yun-fat. They're gonna rob a bank. They don't know who the cop is. He's the cop. And there's a scene with somebody shooting both guns at a armored truck, blowing out the window. And so they're like, "Oh, that's Harvey Keitel shooting at the cops." And so my thing is like we said about Making Tarantino, is maybe Rolling Thunder, like we said, had like a little bit, like maybe but he's not going to copy that. He's going to be like, "I like this feel. I need to now go make that," or "I need something cool like this. I like that." Like you and I've said with writing, like you're like, "Oh, I'll put this in here, or I'll do this little change up or whatever." Directed by Quentin Tarantino. Monty Hellman almost directed this, but then he told Tarantino that he should direct it. So he did. And like I said, we're not doing a recasted from here on out for the rest of the year. For one, Reservoir Dogs be way too difficult. For two, that Chip and I only have so many actors in our head, and we're like, who would be? So here's where, like I said, where Chip's like, "It was my idea, not your idea." This is where Chip will stand firm. How did this movie come into your life?
I saw this movie when I saw it, basically. I rented it and I watched it, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And I said, "Hey, Phil, you should watch this movie. It's fucking badass."
And I said, "I don't want to see no goddamn au revoir infants." Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was, trying to, say, "Hey, you need to watch this." But you got to understand, at that time, there were so many different things that we would both watch and tell each other to watch. And we would just go, "Okay, whatever," But this was one that basically shot him in the foot.
Can I jump in for a second, though? Chip was like, "We should go see The Pest." John Leguizamo's awesome. I'm like, "Okay," we go and see The Pest. And I'm like, "Oh my God, Chip, come on." And at this time, before I understood the brilliancy of the comedy in it, Chip was like, "Billy Madison is the best movie ever made." And I was like, "Bullshit. I saw that fucking with you. It's horrible. I didn't laugh once. It's stupid." And then you watch it and you're like, "Oh, I get it." Just like Ace Ventura, you're like, at first I was like, "I don't get why my friend Joe likes this movie." And then you watch it again and you're like, "Holy shit, this is comedy." Anyway, I'm sorry. Yes. And Chip was like, "Watch this movie." And I'm like, "Dude, I got other stuff to watch, other horrible things to watch." Yeah.
No, it was more like, "I have Spielberg to watch." What are you talking about, son?
Yeah. I don't think it was that.
Yeah.
But yes,
I have all these silent movies to watch.
It was probably that. Yeah. It was but have you seen Broken Blossoms? And you're like, "When was it made?" And I'm like, 1922. And you're like, and I'm like, "Chip, wake up."
Drink more coffee.
Right.
So then he finds out about this movie
This,
that's
yeah,
coming out called Pulp Fiction, and all of a sudden he explodes his face and just goes into talking about this director, and
yeah.
it's so amazing, and gotta watch this Reservoir Dogs, and I'm like, you motherfucker.
Yeah, and I
I've
was
been
like,
trying to get you to watch this thing for
and it's probably like in a way like because we would talk so much, or because like with my wife when I'm telling her something, she's like, and then she'll say something, I'm like, yeah, honey, I just told you that. She, oh well, you talk so much, I didn't. And so I was like, we need to watch Reservoir Dogs. And you're like, I've already seen it. I'm like, what? And you're like, yeah, I've seen it. I fucking told you about it. And I'm like, no, you didn't. I'm the fucking Quentin guy. Blah, blah. And then I was like, oh shit, Chip did tell me about this movie. And then I watch it and I'm like, holy shit. And at the time, we'll get to it with Pulp Fiction, but I took a bunch of people to go see Pulp Fiction that like it did with everybody, changed everybody's life. And it was amazing. And so with this one too, though, it's like, oh my God, like at first you're watching it. If you watch it after Pulp, you're like, this isn't as good as Pulp. But you can see the genius of just it's so simple, shot in one place, pretty much. It's great.
Pretty much, yeah.
So are you ready to get to some listener opinions?
Oh yeah.
Well, you gotta have an opinion.
Well, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
I hated this movie.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
I like it! Opinions vary.
Second Chance Movies Pod wrote, quote, I like this movie with 6 heart emojis, a white one, an orange, a yellow, a blue, a brown, and a shiny pink one.
Nice.
That's fucking brilliant. That's great.
That's awesome.
And Wazaa wrote, quote, classic, love it, with 2 hand clap emojis. And Nick Paladichuk, who we've talked about before in here, he's wrote to us. He's an artist. He's a comic book artist. And he wrote, quote, it helped shine a light on indie films in the 90s, unquote. Grindhouse Database, our new friends over there, wrote, quote, love it, been a fan since 92, unquote. And then our buddy who we just talked about, Tim Martin, director of Sushi, wrote, and writer, director of Sushi, Alex wrote Sushi. Anyway, wrote, quote, after watching all of Tarantino's catalog, it's not one I revisit very often, but definitely showcases the talent we would see in Tarantino from the get-go. The opening diner scene is still one of the most iconic openers ever, and the opening title sequence set to Little Green Bag remains one of my favorite Tarantino music selections, unquote.
Sweet.
So I was like, yeah, totally. Like, I fucking get it. And Quentin has even said, like, he's not happy with the way he directed this, but, and as you and I said, like, other people don't agree, or at least right when Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out, people are like, this isn't a Tarantino movie. Nobody's head exploded. There was the unexpected violence at the end, but what the fuck? And then you kind of sit on it and you're like, no, that is his masterpiece. Like that's him evolving as a filmmaker. And as I said I think it was on the Tarantino Effect, that if he doesn't make his 10th film and never goes to make any other movies, I'm happy with that you ended at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's even said, like, I don't know, I think I did really good there. So, and his books are great now.
Well, and now he's got to, like, if he were to do something else, and he'd have to figure out, like, how am I going to one up this one? Like, this one was so great. Like, how do I do something else? Like, oh my gosh.
Well, yeah, it's like, do you do Kill Bill 3, or what? But yeah.
Well, and the other part is like, for a final film, if he were to be like, I'm going to do my final film, would he take like characters from different movies, like kind of mash things together to try and just make this master thing that connects everything he's ever done in some weird way?
Well, and like he's always said, everybody's connected. So like, so like Eli Roth's character in Inglourious Bastards is the great grandson of is the father of, no, I'm sorry. Yes. He's a great grandson of the dentist from Django or something like that. You know, we'll get to
gotcha.
it when we get to it. But it's like he's like all my stuff, almost like View Askew universe, like it's all connected. Like so. It's
Oh
very
yeah, because like Scagnetti, when they mentioned Scagnetti, in this he's supposed to be related to Scagnetti from Natural Born Killers,
which
yeah.
Quentin Tarantino. We were talking off mic about Rolling Thunder. Quentin Tarantino's not happy with what they did with his script to Natural Born Killers because they changed it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I want to buy. I'm going to buy the Natural Born Killers script and read it so I can see, you know, because just like this script on Reservoir Dogs, I don't know if you ever read it, but there's a deleted scene of, they might talk about it on the DVD or Blu-ray, but there's a scene where Mr. White, remember when Mr. White's like, this happened to me before, I should have my fucking head examined, or maybe that's what's his name says, but he's like, this happened to me before. He's like, what the fuck do you mean? We had a cop that blah, blah, blah. And they show that in the script, it was him knocking on the guy's door or kicking the door down and walking in and shooting that guy and his whole family because he was a cop. And you're like, oh shit. So like, I was thinking about this, watching that, thinking about how Mr. White is just as a character. And it's like, no, Mr. White is like the bad motherfucker. Like he's the one you don't want to mess with, you know, like Blonde is crazy, but Mr. Blonde is like vicious and, you know, cruel.
Yeah.
It's insane. But you ready to discuss this thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. 8 gangsters eat breakfast at a Los Angeles diner. All but the boss, Joe Cabot, and his son, the underboss, nice guy Eddie Cabot, use aliases: Mr. Brown, Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, and Mr. Pink. After Mr. Brown finishes rambling about the Madonna song Like a Virgin, the group argues about Pink's policy of not tipping. So, first of all, a little thing that maybe everybody knows, again, like I said, Madonna told Tarantino when she met him that that's not what Like a Virgin is about. And like she wrote him a little thing, like kind of wrote a thing of like, that's not what it's about, but good idea.
Yeah.
And a little behind the scenes thing is because Mr. Pink doesn't believe in tipping, Steve Buscemi then had to over tip every time he went somewhere. So he was like, I fucking hated it. Like,
wow.
And this is where
why would you need to over tip? He didn't tip at all.
Right.
He didn't believe in tipping at all. So at least if he just tipped.
But he felt if he didn't tip that somebody would be like, oh, because he doesn't believe in tipping, like whatever. But it's funny how people are, for one, with movies, for two, with TV show like Sopranos. Like I remember Joey Pants was like out walking around New York and some girl comes up to him and like spits on him or yells at him for fucking with Tony on Sopranos. And he's like, I'm an actor. Like I'm playing a part. Like, what do you mean? Like, what the fuck? So then when they leave, this is where Little Green Bag plays over the credits, but it was almost Pink Floyd's Money. Doom, 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 doom.
That one, no.
So that would, it would be interesting, but you can't see it now because you know Little Green Bag.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool. Yeah.
But I did want to point out, this is Tarantino's first movie, right? He is the first voice you hear.
Right. Yeah.
Tarantino is the first voice you hear. And I was like, I didn't realize that until watching this again. I was like, oh my God. Like, is it a thing where he's like, number one, you're going to hear me fucking first. Number two, I'm in this fucking movie because it may be my only movie I ever make for all I fucking know.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's true. But also, he wanted to play, he was going to play Mr. Pink or Mr. Orange at the time. And there's that behind the scenes footage of him and Steve Buscemi going to Sundance to work out their scenes and their characters and all that stuff. And so he was going to do that, but then he was like, I'll just be Mr. Brown. Like I couldn't understand how to direct yourself. Like, I don't know how Clint Eastwood does it with like, you know, and like, you know, Bradley Cooper on Stars Born. Like, how do you, you know, how do you be like, did that look good? Like, like we've talked about before on here, I forget which episode, but it's the thing of don't take your best take. Like you're gonna try to take your best take. Just do your thing and like leave and you're done.
Yeah.
But yeah. The gangsters carry out a diamond heist. White flees with Orange, who was shot during the escape and is bleeding severely in the back of White's car, not really White's car, at one of Joe's warehouses. White and Orange rendezvous with Pink, who believes that the job was set up and that the police were waiting for them. So this is where the movie, like, you're like, oh wow, this was fun dialogue. It's interesting. You got Toby Wong, Toby. He's like, I got Toby the Jap, I don't know what coming out of this ear, and I got Madonna's big dick coming out of this ear. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And it's a regular conversation that you would have if you had more than two people. You got, 8 people there talking, and it's going to overlap dialogue. It's going to whatever. Like we talked about, Howard Hawks will be like, what you do is you write meaningless stuff at the end of your words. The other guy can talk over it. You're not cutting anything important out. All the important stuff said, then somebody jumps on, and it's just great. And him being like, you didn't know fucking, the lights went out in Georgia. Like, you didn't know that. No, I just fucking told you. I just now clued into it. Like,
well, and that was the thing about it, though, is the conversations they had, there wasn't really much overlapping until they were arguing. But it was good because a lot of the conversation, that's part of the reason why I could not get into the original MASH movie.
Right.
Was because there was so much talking because there was too many people around and they were all talking over each other that it fucking annoyed the shit out of me. But the way that this was, it was like a choreographed perfect scene. And then when they're arguing, okay, it's arguing. It doesn't matter because they're bullshitting.
Yeah, they're razzing each other or whatever. Yeah.
So.
The and then so then it goes from there, them walking, beautiful music, beautiful credits. You're like, oh, is this what we're in for? All of a sudden you're like, oh, they're gonna go do a heist. What are they doing? Is this a heist film? And that was what I didn't say before, was Quentin's like, my thing is a heist, but you never see the heist. In The Killing, you see the heist. City on Fire, you see the heist. This one, he was like, I do shit where you don't see the heist, you don't see, certain things that you never see. So when it just cuts to all of a sudden a white interior of a car and him bleeding in there and him just like in pain, and Mr. White's like, are you a fucking doctor? Say, I'm gonna be okay, and now you're kind of laughing and you're like, oh my god, like what's going on? Like, holy fuck. Like, because it jumps, because you've never seen that before in a modern movie. Like I said, like The Killing, I can point out, like, yeah, that happened there. Other people might write us and tell us that, yes, we're wrong. But since 55, maybe nothing has done that until now, until 92. But,
or at least in not that way where it just leads you into this.
Yeah, just pop. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you're just like, what the fuck? And then they show up at the kick open that door, the door almost slides shut again, and he has to kick it open again. And you're like, was that a mistake? Was that like, I like how this is going. Like, it's just, and
and I don't even know, like, with that being realistic, where he's kicking it open and it kind of starts to close back on him. It's like that would happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And that made it more real. That made it better. So
yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All that kind of stuff. And the, and then when Mr. Pink comes in and Mr. Pink's like, what the fuck was that? Was that a setup or what? And you're like, oh shit. Like, people are like, earlier they were all chill at breakfast. And now all of a sudden they're fucking amped up and like freaked out. And Mr. Pink's like, I'm going to go get a hotel. Like, fuck this. Like, I'm out of here. And they're like, no, fucking wait. And he's like, White informs Mr. Pink that Brown is dead. Blue and Blonde are missing, and Blonde murdered several civilians during the heist. And he's like, yeah, how old was that girl? 20? And he's like, yeah, if that. And you're like, holy shit. And there is the cool line of, and when you get older, you're like, Mr. Blonde isn't as cool as I used to think he was. Like, he's a fucking severe killer. But when he's like, if they wouldn't have done what I told them not to do, they would be alive. Like I wouldn't have had to kill them. And you're like, it's so well written that it's like, oh my God, it's like Quentin said, it's got that rhythm to it. And, so.
Well, and he has his logic, even though he's a psychopath, he has his logic to like, well,
he's well, for one, he's like, I'm not going back to fucking prison for these people.
Yeah.
For two, like, I'll live and die for Joe Cabot. Like, he's helped me out in more ways than you can even imagine, which is good when it comes up later, because everybody in there, the thing about writing and stuff is that you need to know this guy doesn't know about this guy. So all these guys think that they're all strangers to each other.
Yeah.
Except for Mr. Orange is like, I think Mr. White knows Joe Cabot because the way they act together.
Yeah.
It's like they know each other. But he never says anything about Blonde and Nice Guy Eddie. And then it comes out, that's a cool reveal when he tries to tell Nice Guy Eddie that. Nice Guy Eddie's like, you're going to tell me that this guy who did 5 years for us, like, and you're like, oh shit, he has no idea. Like, oh my God, he just tried to lie,
Well, and that's the coolest part about it is that you're finding out all this stuff as it gets revealed.
Yeah, as it lays out.
But at the same time, we as the audience are being told everything. We know who the cop is.
Yeah.
We know how the relationships are to Cabot and everybody like that. We know all this stuff. So it's like, it's not us sitting there trying to figure out who done it type of bullshit. We know who done it, and we're like, how is this going to lay out? It's almost like a reality TV holy shit.
Yeah.
Kind of moment.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, but also you're still wondering up until we'll get to it, but you're wondering who's the cop. And you're kind of with Mr. Pink. You're like, I'm pretty sure you're okay. I know the fuck that I'm not a cop, but you're still like, I don't know, Mr. Pink. Like, And then you're like, what the fuck? And they bring the cop in, but let's not jump ahead. White is furious that Joe, his old friend, would employ Blonde, whom he describes as a psychopath. Pink has hidden the diamonds nearby. He argues with White over whether to get medical attention for Orange, and the pair draw guns at each other. They stand down when Blonde arrives with the kidnapped policeman, Marvin Nash. So this part is cool. When Blonde shows up, they're arguing, and it's, like you said, that natural thing of Mr. Pink being like, we don't know if he's dead or if he's alive. Like, what the fuck? Like, how did you get out of there? Like, what's going on? He's asking all these questions, and White's like, shut up. You better start talking, motherfucker. And you're like, yeah, that's true. Like, you're just rambling. Like, stop being so, like White said, like, are you cool? Like, be cool. And Pink's a little like, I need to fucking go. Like, I've never been this close to being busted.
Yeah.
So that Cadillac is Michael Madsen's Cadillac.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that's cool. Sometime earlier, Blonde meets with the Cabot, having completed a 4-year, I knew I was wrong. I knew it was 4-year jail sentence. To reward him for not having given Joe's name to the authorities for a lighter sentence, they offer him a no-show job. Blonde insists that he wants to get back to real work, and they recruit him for the heist. The part I always like is, Scagnetti says, I need a real job, like a job type job. And then he's like, no, like, maybe we sent you here, maybe we sent you there. And, and when he's like Scagnetti, and they're like, oh, fuck, like that guy, we can't bribe, we can't do anything. Like, Scagnetti's a tough motherfucker.
Yeah.
So that part's cool. Joe Cabot is cool. It's that part in there too when he's like, when Nice Guy Eddie comes in, and they're just kind of not really talking, and then Nice Guy Eddie shows up, and he's like, hey guys, and he's like, so what's going on? Actually, we were just talking about you. He was saying he needs somebody to run this place because it's not being ran very good. And Nice Guy Eddie's like, what? And Joe Cabot's like, he asked me, so I told him. And you're like, oh fuck, he's playing along. That's awesome. And then all of a sudden he's like, and then he pushed that chair away and they start wrestling and Joe Cabot's like, go in your office if you want to wrestle. Like fucking stop. Let's talk
Well, that was
business.
kind of cool because even for an audience, I'm kind of sitting here going, this is going on too long. Like it was kind of annoying me how much they were kind of about to fight again or whatever like that. And then he finally stops them.
Yeah.
And he's like, stop fucking around. We got work to do or whatever. And then you're like, okay. So
Yeah.
he, you know, Tarantino made you feel that.
Yeah.
Where you understood where Joe was like, all right, guys.
you've been in those situations where somebody has wrestled around and you're like, all right, guys, it was funny the first time. It's not funny anymore. Like, stop. Like, you know.
Yep.
But yeah. In the present, White and Pink beat Nash for information. Eddie arrives and orders them to retrieve the diamonds and ditch the getaway vehicles. It looks like Joe's fucking hot car lot out there or whoever.
Yeah.
Leaving Blonde in charge of Nash and Orange. So he's like, I'll call somebody. Who are you going to call? A fucking snake charmer. Who the fuck do you think? I'm going to call a doctor. And fucking Chris Penn is so good. There's only one part, I think, and I still like it when he's like, why don't you tell me what really happened? Like he's just, but it's just fucking cool. And a little side story behind the scenes that's on the DVD is so after the movie, like Lawrence Tierney called Chris Penn and was like, hey, why don't we hang out or something? And he said, so he comes over to the house and he said, and I'm sitting there like, okay, it's time to go now. We're all ready for bed. And Lawrence Tierney's still there, like talking and just like won't leave.
Wow.
And finally he was like, he said something like, oh, I think Lawrence Tierney was either like, I like this furniture out here on your back patio. And he's like, you want it? Like, you can have it. Like, just here, take it, like, whatever. And finally got rid of him. But they were saying, Quentin was saying on also an interview thing where he said they were going to have this guy, Thomas, he's a guy from The Killing. And they were going to have him do it, which would have been really cool. But he said he was crazy. He's like, so I don't know who would have been better to deal with Lawrence Tierney or deal with this guy. And so it's like, oh shit. God damn, that guy is good too. I gotta look him up real quick. But yeah, Thomas. Anyway, Chip, talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. Yeah, it's I think that intensity, like it's funny how when you see Chris Penn playing, wrestling around with Michael Madsen, and you're like, okay, whatever, kind of a thing. Like you kind of get that feeling like maybe he's the second in command, but maybe he is kind of just a dumb, kid kind of a thing. But then when this situation happens and he's so serious and he's so in charge, basically, I was like, that's badass. Where it shows a totally different side of him.
Yeah, for sure. It was Timothy Carey was that guy's name. But yeah, it's the thing where also, the way that works is him kind of joking around, but also you're like, but also you understand that they're like brothers.
Yeah.
So when that comes later, like I said, when Mr. Pink's like, he was burning, man. He was pulling a burn. Like he was, and it's like, you telling me this guy fucking, you're like, oh shit. Like, fuck, he's in trouble now. Like, getaway vehicles, Blonde charged Nash. Nash denies knowledge, but Blonde ignores him and resumes the torture, cutting off Nash's ear with a straight razor. So this is a part I've talked about before, but now we're talking about Reservoir Dogs. So during this Quentin Tarantino craziness that I was in, I bought double soundtrack of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and it came with liner notes. And in the liner notes was an interview with Quentin about Reservoir and Pulp Fiction. And they said, what made you think of like cutting off his ear with a razor blade, with a straight razor? And he's like, I didn't know he had a straight razor in his boot until he pulled it out of his boot. And now at the time I hadn't written much. And I was like, what the fuck? What does that mean? You wrote the fucking thing. Yeah, you wrote the fucking thing. And then years later, I'm writing a script and I had a problem with these guys have been kind of busted and they can't go with this guy because he's a liar and they got to figure out how to do the crime. But how are they going to do this heist if they can't? And all of a sudden the guy's like, they just start talking and they work it out. And I'm like, I didn't do it. They were talking to each other and I just fucking wrote down. And that's what Quentin said. I'm a stenographer. I just write what they say. And Quentin has said about 40% into the script, people just start talking and you just go with it. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, once you've established who they are, it just all of a sudden starts becoming something of its own.
Yeah. So the song, it was going to be Ballroom Blitz instead of Stuck in the Middle with You. It's the Ballroom Blitz. It's. So that would have been weird.
It would have been a very different like feeling if you had, the Pink Floyd
like that really up. Yeah.
like both of those in there.
And Ballroom Blitz is so like, I mean, there's parts that are a little slower, but Ballroom Blitz is so going, and Stuck in the Middle is like, it's kind of, but he prepares to set him on fire. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, holy shit. Like, what's he going to get out of his car? Oh, a fucking gas can? Like, holy shit. And you're like, guys, come back, hurry. He's going to kill the cop. Because now I don't know. I mean, it's weird. You can tell me how you feel now. So are you on their side? Are you on the cop side? Are you just like, oh, that's badass, Mr. Blonde? Or I mean, it's kind of weird. I think the movie makes it where you're kind of for everybody, and you kind of don't like Mr. Blonde because he did make the heist go wrong. Maybe because of him. But the actuality was, like he said, no, I turn around, the cops are there. He's like, no, I'm telling you, they didn't make their presence known until,
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's the difference is the first time I watched it, I don't know what I was thinking at that time. I think being invested in it.
Yeah, it was you're just like, oh my God. Yeah.
But now watching it, when he was going to set fire to him, and then Orange shoots him, his explaining everything to Nice Guy Eddie and everything, I was sitting there thinking, now that I'm older, I'm thinking I would have just been like, he was going to set fire to him.
Yeah.
This place would have burned down.
Yeah.
Like a guy on fire screaming.
Yeah.
Or something. And I'm right here dying already.
I can't get out.
Do you want this? Yeah. Do you want this place to go up? And then everybody knows, because then you'll have cops, fire. Yeah. Everybody here.
Yeah.
That would have made more sense.
Yeah. 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 True. So you're saying Quentin can't write for shit? Is that what you're saying? No. But it does work where, so like you said, but Orange shoots him dead when he tries to set him on fire. Orange reveals to Nash that he is an undercover police officer. So that's when the first time watching, you're like, oh shit. I never would have thought the guy that got injured, that's what's cool about it, is the guy that got shot that's almost dying, he's the cop. And when you saw that replay, he shoots that girl, and you see the look on his face for a second when he's laying on the ground after he got shot and shoots her, he's just kind of like dazed because he's so in the moment of being undercover that he just shot her because she shot him. And it's like, I'm thinking, like, even if you get out of this, can you get out of killing somebody? Like, you killed a civilian.
Yeah.
But he reveals to Nash he's an undercover cop, and it's sad because Nash is like, yeah, I know, we got introduced by Frankie so-and-so, and he's like, I don't remember. And he's like, and you're like, that's why this guy remembered it. He's a guy in uniform. You're an undercover cop who he's like, wow, this is cool. I'm meeting an undercover cop. Someday I can be an undercover cop. But no, not when Nice Guy Eddie's involved.
Well, and that's another thing that
and just real quick, and that he tells him the police will arrive soon.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But that at that point, even with him saying, I'm deformed, cut off my ear and all this shit.
What are they waiting for? Yeah. I got no fucking ear.
Yeah. I'm sitting here going, okay, he's whining and he's being kind of, when he's saying don't bitch out on me now.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here going, yeah, but he was getting his ear cut off and getting gas thrown on him, and he knew who you were.
Yeah.
And didn't say a fucking thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
You could have been like, that guy's a cop right there. And he'd be like, what the fuck? And he would have stopped focusing on him and went over to him. But he did not do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't think of that. But also, because the thing of him passed out, you're like, okay, cool. He can't intervene until when he wakes up and sees that Blonde is backed away. And then shoots him. But yeah, it's a thing of also, in a way of, And this, of course, again, is diving into it. Chip and I did this with our first Making Tarantino episode, but it's a thing of, for Marvin Nash being a uniformed police officer, for one, like you said, doing good, not saying anything. For two, Mr. Orange shouldn't be, I mean, he's in pain, but he should be, he's kind of the undercover cop that's supposed to have hope and be, which he kind of does. He's kind of like, well, they're coming any minute now. They'll be, and he's like, what the fuck are they waiting for? And it's like, now that you're whining and crying, now you're freaking him out too. You know, somebody's got to be cool in this situation. And right now you're almost cooler, but then again, you're not as hurt as him with a stomach wound. But anyway, when Eddie, Pink, and White return, Orange tries to convince them that Blonde planned to kill them all and steal the diamonds for himself. Eddie impulsively kills this cop right here and just shoots him, and you're like, oh fuck.
Damn.
He shoots him more than one. Pop, pop, pop. Kills Nash and accuses Orange of lying, since Blonde was loyal to his father. So that's when he's like, you know, that's a cool scene too. Like I said, when he's like, you're telling me after 4 years in the joint of not saying a fucking word, and them keep pulling him in and being like, you want to talk about Joe? You want to tell? And he's like, nope. And they're like, fuck, we got nothing. You're telling me after all this time, he's going to fucking decide out of the fucking blue to, and you're like, oh fuck. Like, he's like, oh fuck, Orange. What are you going to do now? Like, what's going on? And, Joe arrives with news that the police have killed Blue. He's about to execute Orange, whom he suspects is a traitor behind the setup, but White intervenes and holds Joe at gunpoint, insisting that Orange is not an undercover cop. So now, this part also, you kind of go, yeah, but you've heard everything going on, but you have this loyalty to this guy.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it's more of a, I don't want to believe it, and I'm not going to believe it, and I'm going to stick my head in the sand, and I'm going to fight for this guy because we're closer than I've ever been with anybody else.
Yeah.
And Eddie aims at White. So there's this thing, you know, on the internet where, how did Eddie get shot then if Joe and White were pointing guns at each other and Joe was pointing a gun at, you know, or Eddie was pointing at White, Joe was pointing the gun at Orange. How did Eddie die? But it's, you see two shots, like White turns and shoots, you know, shoots Eddie.
As he's falling down.
Eddie aims at White, creating a Mexican standoff. All three fire, both Cabots are killed, and White and Orange are hit. Pink, the only uninjured person, takes the diamonds and flees, but is apprehended by the police outside. You can hear, if you listen, you can hear them be like, hold it right there, mister. And some gunshots, but they've said he's arrested. As White cradles the dying Orange in his arms, Orange confesses that he is an undercover officer. It's the acting of those two in that scene of him like grabbing his arm and like kind of holding him and kind of being like, and you can tell like he almost doesn't want to say it, but he's like, I have to say it. And he's like, I'm a cop. And then Harvey Keitel is just like, you know, and you're like, oh my God. And like they've said, like on a thing where Quentin said, somebody asked him like, well, what's your subtext of your movie? Like what is, and he goes, that's when I was like, oh, then I realized like White is a father figure to Orange. And, you know, it's that dynamic. And White presses his gun to Orange's head. The police storm the warehouse and order White to drop his gun. Gunshots sound and White collapses. The end. So yeah, so you're just like, holy shit. Like, you know, it's that sad moment. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, in my head though, I really, with what I was hearing outside, I thought I heard gunshots and stuff, to the point where I thought that Pink was dead, like that he went out in a hail of bullets, that he wasn't arrested, because I figured that this is a movie where everybody's dead.
Yeah. That's what I used to think, and I think I heard from somewhere that no, he does survive, but yeah, it is. I used to think that, but I thought that I read somewhere recently, but
so that gives me hope.
But yeah.
that Tarantino's 10th movie is Mr. Pink
Yeah, all by himself.
getting out of jail.
With
so
the
many
bride.
years later. Yeah.
No, that's very interesting. So it's that sad thing of like, you're like, and a lot of people like might not understand that. Like, what does that mean? I can't tell. Does he shoot him? Does he not? But no, you see, he even moves his arm like he shot him in the head, and then he falls back when he gets shot. So, it's just, and of course, Quentin made this movie because he made money from selling True Romance.
Yeah.
And so he was like, "Oh, I'll make this movie for $30,000. I'll make it black and white. Me and my friends or whatever will do this." And all of a sudden, a friend of his that read the script, I forget who exactly she was, but she gave it to Harvey Keitel. Harvey Keitel read it and was like, "Dude, I'll do your movie." And he's like, "Oh." So now they had that to be like, "We got Harvey Keitel in our movie, and
So
we
that
want to make
raises
this
it,
movie."
like-
And they're like, "We'll give you $1.5 million to make this movie." And he's like, "Okay." And then he gets Tim Roth and fucking Chris Penn and Michael Madsen. And so it's very
That's
cool. And that he doesn't do it black and white, does it in color and all that. And there is a hidden radio ad for Jackrabbit Slims in the movie.
Oh,
so it
sweet.
might be while they're driving, maybe you can hear it on the radio. But yeah, I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And is there something that sticks with you from this movie? Like some specific scene? Like everybody says the ear cutting and the stuck in the middle with you. That one's good, but also watching this movie for the first time, I remember like the when he's like, "You're fucking Beretta." I'm like, he fucking said Beretta. Like nobody mentioned Beretta. That's one of those things where you're like, "Oh my God." And he's mentioned in Pam Grier and Get Christy Love. And I went and got the movie of Get Christy Love with, or it was the first episode of the TV show or whatever, and it was like, okay. But anyway, I'm sorry, but mine is, I don't know, mine's that diner sequence maybe. And the and just that whole thing of, "Why don't you tell me what really happened?" Like that whole thing was like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. I think back then I was all about those main scenes that everybody talked about. Watching it now, I love the actual shots that were done inside of there, where White and Pink are talking.
Oh
and
yeah,
it's just
like
kind of
in the
down the
restroom.
hallway kind of a thing. Yeah. And it was just, there's something about that there were certain scenes where it was like it would zoom in to a point, and then there were points where it would zoom out and it would just stay there, and all you would see is them just walking back and forth and through this doorway and stuff. And I was just like, this is fucking amazing. I understand, like you said, that Tarantino hates how he directed it on some points or whatever, but I don't know if this was all due to the cinematographer or what, of why this came out so well on some of those shots.
And that was the first time that he used Sally Menke for the editor. And so some of that was, I forget what exactly it was, but there was a scene where he was like, "No, she edited it in a way where they were going to show the ear, they were going to show the cutting, and you can see it on the director's cut, but or on added footage, but it's done where it doesn't show that." It's really cool. So it's very awesome. So you want to hear some reviews here? Rotten Tomatoes critical consensus reads, quote, "Thrumming with intelligence and energy, Reservoir Dogs opens Quentin Tarantino's filmmaking career with hard-hitting style," unquote.
Nice.
So I give this movie 5 out of 5 hearts, celluloid hearts. What do you give it? What do you give it? 5? All right. And then do you have wrap this up, or I mean, I got Phil's film favorite that I got to get to, which is really fucking good. You should check it out.
Okay.
But anyway, Reservoir Dogs for the wrap up. Everybody go check it out if you haven't. I don't even know where it is. I found it on iTunes. Did you have to? I already owned it, so I just got off my library.
Yeah, I went ahead and I think I rented it. I think that's what I had to do. So
oh, okay. So Phil's film favorite of the week is Barbarian from
Oh, yeah,
2022. It's on HBO Max. I had heard about this movie. I heard like, oh my God, it's really good. And you don't want to read the plot. You just want to go in cold. And so then when it came available on HBO Max almost immediately, well, after a month or two in the theater, and I'm like, cool. And me and the wife watched it, and it was one of those like, ooh, don't go in there. Ooh, don't go do that. Like, what the fuck is going on? But
Where
in a
you're
good
yelling
way.
at the screen, like, don't do that. What are you doing?
In a good way where you're like, okay, that's smart, but still she shouldn't go down there. Me and the wife are like, the wife's like, don't go down there.
Yeah.
And then also of just like, is this guy bad? Is that guy bad? Or what's going on in a good way, not in a bad way of like, what the fuck is this movie about? But in a good way. And then halfway through, it jumps to like Justin Long. And you're like, and it's the same movie, but he's in a different area. And you're like, what the fuck's going on? And then it follows his character. And then he becomes, circles back on itself. And it's way cool. And I gave it 5 hearts, 5 stars, whatever on Letterboxd. Go to our Letterboxd, My Cellular Heart podcast, and check it out. So, yeah. Do you have anything else to say before we end this show?
No. It was good to watch this again. Haven't seen it in a bit.
Yeah.
I kind of think I need to put this on rotation. I think I waited too long to watch this. I need to do it at least once a year. So
yeah, it's very fun, and it's the thing where I get what Tim's saying. You don't watch it a lot. It's not on your rotation, but it's a quick 90 minutes, like boom, boom, boom. You're in and out. Like it's awesome.
Yep.
And so I didn't even talk about, look at this. I'm jumping to this. Supposed to say, hey guys, join us on, hang on, I gotta go back a little bit, Chip. Where are we at? Okay. Come back on November 11th for
Miramax Films is proud to present one of the most celebrated motion pictures of the year. The winner of the 1994 Palme d'Or, the best picture of the Cannes Film Festival.
Come on, let's get in character. Why are you so interested in Big Man's wife? Well, he's going out of town, Florida, and he asked me if I'd take care of her while he's gone. Take care of her? No, man. Just show her a good time, make sure she don't get lonely. Girl. You see, this is a moral test of oneself.
I do believe Marcellus, my husband, your boss, told you to take me out and do whatever I wanted.
Whether or not you can maintain loyalty.
Night of the fight, you may feel a slight sting. Pride only hurts. It never helps. In the fifth, your ass goes down.
I have to say, you play with matches, you get burned.
We should have shotguns for this kind of deal.
We're in a lot of danger, aren't we?
I'm prepared to scour the earth for that moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Get down, get down. You got a corpse in a car, minus a head in a garage. Take me to it.
Don't you hate that?
Hey, what?
Uncomfortable silences.
John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer, Maria de Medeiros, Bing Rames, Eric Stoltz, Rosanna Arquette, Christopher Walken, and Bruce Willis.
Looking at something, friend? Ain't my friend looking.
Die, you mother!
A new film directed by Quentin Tarantino. Pulp Fiction.
You really thinking about quitting?
Most definitely.
What you gonna do then?
Basically, I'm just gonna walk the earth.
What you mean walk the earth?
You know, like Kane in Kung Fu.
That's right, from 1994, Pulp Fiction. So that will be very exciting. And can't wait to get to that one. And who knows how much facts we'll have about it, because a lot of people know about that. But yeah,
true.
Everybody check out my last week's episode, Quentin Tarantino Effect. It's pretty good. It's everything that I went down rabbit holes to look at. But certain movies stick with you. They stay in your head and heart forever. So from all of us at My Sailor at Heart, keep watching movies. What do you have to say, Chip? Anything?
Bring out the Gimp.
Wow, that's Pulp Fiction. You always jump ahead.
That's what we're going into.
Well, I guess, but I thought, the Gimp's sleeping. The Gimp is sleeping. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.